To introduce Brasseur. She's a manager of technical people, projects, processes, products, and businesses at Hewlett-Packard, working on a team that's 100% dedicated to open source. And today she's talking about maximizing drive-through contributions. Give her a round of applause.
And the timer is running. Hello, everyone. If you're not here for maximizing drive-through contributions, then please stick around because it's good content. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to dive right into it. First of all, super fast introduction because you're not here to learn about me, but I am VM Brasseur, but because we're all friends here, you can just call me Vicky. Also, the virtual machine jokes have gotten really old. So as Marcus said, I am a senior software engineering manager at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I work in service to a team which is 100% dedicated to upstream open source development, primarily in OpenStack, but I also support the work of Donald Stuft and Corey Benfield. So, and I want to take a moment to thank Hewlett-Packard Enterprise for everything they do for open source, including supporting these very vital Python endeavors. Yes, that's worthy of applause. All right, so because I am a manager, I'm going to do something that is known in the management world as setting up expectations. First of all, what we will cover. This is normally a 50-minute talk. I'm going to do it in 30. So it will be a 50,000-foot view of the subject. A lot of things will have had to be cut for time. I will be available afterward if you need to talk to me, however. I will define what a drive-through contributor and contribution is. I will tell you some of the disadvantages that people report about these things. And then, because I'm biased, I'll tell you the advantages and why you should care. And then how you can maximize drive-throughs. What I am not going to do at any point during this conversation, at least not focus on it specifically, is tell you how to convert a drive-through contributor to a community member. This is a really important thing, but we're just not going to cover it right now. A lot of the things I will tell you about how to maximize a drive-through contribution benefit everybody and can actually help with this, so you can get double duty with those. Also, please save your questions for after the talk. As I said, it usually is a 50-minute thing. Now it's crammed down into 30, and I'm jet-lagged and easily distracted. One of those questions is always, where can I get the slides? They're available right now at Internet Archive, where everybody should post their slides, because proprietary sucks. I will give you this URL afterward as well, so you can get it later. So let's start with those definitions. For the purposes of this talk only, a contribution is anything which can be checked into source control. Now, there are lots of other ways that we can contribute to open source projects, and they're all very important. You can do project management, you can do community management, bug triaging. There are so many different ways you can contribute to open source, but they all require a larger commitment to the project. So, for this talk, when I say contribution, I mean something that's committed to source control. A contributor is anyone who does that committing. Not gonna linger on that, it's pretty simple. Drive-through contributor, somebody who shows up, gives you one contribution, and then bugs out. You never see them again. This is sometimes seen in the literature as a drive-by contributor, but I lived in California for 18 years, and we have other connotations for that. So I won't be calling these drive-bys. So let's get going with some more interesting stuff. When I first hit upon this idea of maximizing drive-through contributors and why it matters to your project, I went to Twitter, as I do for pretty much everything, as y'all who follow me know that, and I asked for people to speak to me. What's it like receiving or giving a drive-through contribution? And a lot of people came back to me. I did a lot of one-on-one interviews over email, DMs, Skype, to talk to people to gather information. What follows, therefore, is data-driven. But I'm not going to give you the data because I have 30 minutes. So, first of all, let me tell you some of the categories, some of the characteristics of contributions and contributors for drive-throughs. Contributions are easiest, so I'll start there. There are primarily 4 categories that I found in my research for drive-through contributions. You have self-service, you have a bug that's bugging you. Work-related. You have to get something done for the job, but something is blocking you. Otherwise, you wouldn't contribute at all. You have a special project or use case. Let's say, hearkening back to Russell's earlier keynote, you want to get that BIOS support back into Python 3. That would be your drive-through contribution. And then there are documentation, addition, and fixes. These are the largest category of drive-through contributions. So contributions are really easy because they're code. What's difficult to categorize are contributors because they're people. We're difficult, squishy objects, right? So I'm not going to categorize contributors, but I will give you some information of some of the tendencies of drive-through contributors. First of all, why do they show up? That's important. Why do they show up to your project? Well, not going to surprise you. They are scratching that itch. They do have that bug that they need to squash. So they do that. There's that one typo, or that one time somebody says who instead of whom in your documentation. So they show up and they fix that. Sometimes they are unable or unwilling to use another project. Often this happens when they're using it for work. Say they're a huge fan of Postgres, but they're working in a MySQL shop. They really have to fix that one thing. So they show up for that and then they bug out. But most often, they like you, they really, really like you. They love your project, they love what it does for them, and they want to participate, they want to contribute, but they don't have a lot of time because I don't know about you, but I have a life, not much of one, but I have one. And a lot of it, my time can't be dedicated to giving contributions to open source projects, unfortunately. So these really are the primary reasons that I found in my research that people show up to your project as drive-throughs. But why do they leave? That's considerably harder because it turns out not many people bother asking. But I was able to find some things. First of all, they scratched that itch. We'll get the obvious one out of the way. They fixed that who-whom problem. Twitter, I'm looking at you. Often they just don't have time, though. And we all have this problem. Budgets are difficult things. Every resource is valuable, but time is one that you can never get back. So they make one contribution and they just don't have the time to make another. Sometimes they stop using your project. Let's say that they leave that MySQL shop, or that, yes, they leave that MySQL shop. So they never have to contribute to MySQL again. Sorry, Oracle. But often it's difficult to contribute. They give you lines of code and tests and documentation and blood and sweat and tears, and it takes them forever. And they are never doing that again because it was just so bloody hard. Did it once, fool me once, more shame me, fool me twice. No, that's not going to happen. And then sometimes they're not appreciated. They'll give you a pull request, it will be silently merged. No thanks, nothing. And unfortunately, assholes, as you know. When I was doing my interviews, I heard some really grim stories. One drive-through contributor said that they gave a patch to a project, and then the core contributors took credit for their work. Another said that they took all the time and effort, which was considerable, to make a patch. But even though it was a project they really liked, after seeing how the community worked, they didn't want to be a member of that snark club. And so they left. So assholes, big reason why people leave. So as I was talking to these people, I was talking not only to drive-through contributors, but also organizers of various projects. And some of them admitted to using dismissive behavior, what I personally would call assholery, towards various drive-through contributors. And they rationalized this by saying that, but there are disadvantages to having drive-through contributors in your project. One of the reasons is that it just takes time. You know, I, as a very beleaguered, difficult, hard, oh my God, I'm giving you so much time to help you get your patch in and land it, and then you just leave? I've just lost all those hours of my life. I did not follow up with, yeah, but you got a patch out of it. That's rude. But what they all said is that these people aren't community. Why would I spend time on them if it's obvious they're not going to become a member of my community? That's because these people are seeing things like this. Here's the hierarchy of people that they are seeing in their project. They're seeing community as the foundation of their project. That is the most important part. After that, you have contributors and cores. They're not narcissistic enough to put the cores at the bottom. So these people aren't community, so therefore, I don't want to help them. They're not going to stick around. Problem is, your actual foundation of your community, of your project, are your contributors. Because if you don't have contributors, you will never have community. These are people who have their priorities just a little out of whack. Community is super important. You're going to hear me talking about community immensely. I write about it, I talk about it, I will help you with it as much as humanly possible. Code of conduct. I love community, but it is not the foundation of the people in your project. So, therefore, I believe that an ever-increasing number of drive-through contributions and contributors is a possible sign of a healthy project. And if your project does not have that, it's possible that you don't have a healthy project. So if you do have a lot of drive-through contributors, if you are measuring this and you're seeing that metric go up, that can be a sign of a lot of good stuff. If you have a lot of drive-through contributors, it means more people are looking at your project, and who doesn't want that? They're also using it, which is really even better than just looking at it. And more people are able to contribute. If more people are able to contribute, then that validates your contribution process. And that's cool. And therefore, you also end up with a lot more contributors, which you can eventually convert to community members. You can build that foundation upon which your project is based. So, pardon me. Apparently I left my working lungs in Portland. So, that metric of drive-through contributors, maximizing it can do a lot of good things for your project. If you focus on maximizing drive-through contributors, you will end up with a better process. Not overnight. Nothing is overnight. There is no silver bullet. But you will end up with an improved process. It will be open, clear, direct, and unambiguous. And if your process is open, clear, direct, and unambiguous, it also means that the methods you use to communicate it are also open, clear, direct, and unambiguous. And who doesn't love that? You also see improved numbers, assuming that you're looking at numbers at all. Some communities don't, but if you do, please look at flosscommunitymetrics.org. You'll have more contributions and naturally more contributors if you have more drive-through contributors. If you have a better process and more people giving you code, then you'll have faster merge time and release time because you've got a faster process. You also will end up with a much higher quality project. Linus's law, which doesn't always work and sometimes gets mocked, but in this case it does. With more eyes, or with enough eyes, all bugs are shallow. Drive-through contributors get you an immense number of eyes. So they're finding more bugs, and if they're finding more bugs, they're sometimes fixing them. They're fixing more bugs. It often comes with test coverage and documentation coverage, and this helps your project overall, just because you've focused on maximizing the people who show up, give you one patch, and leave. You also can end up with a happier project culture. People are seeing your project as more welcoming and more friendly. If you have better quality code and a better quality project, or a better quality culture, you end up with a better quality project overall. Combine these two things, code and people, that is open source. And when you improve both of them for your project, everyone wins. And you can do that by focusing on drive-through contributions. You are more accessible. This will lead to more exposure, and that leads to more project adoption, and this is a beneficial cycle. The more you do it, the better it gets. The more you do it, the better it gets. And that is a healthier project overall. So I've yammered on a bit about why you should care. Now I'll tell you some methods for maximizing drive-through contributions. Now, I'm going to rattle off a bunch of stuff. I'm definitely not going to cover everything. And I would like to point out, I don't expect anyone to try all of these things. Your mileage may vary, no silver bullet, yada, yada, yada. So look at this as a sort of an iterative development sort of space. Look at your project, analyze it, see what it needs, see what it wants, Find one suggestion, just one, and focus on that. Make that change, do the measurement, and then see whether it worked. And if it did, great. Try another change. And just sort of build slowly. Don't do it all at once. We all know that if you make tons of changes and then commit the code, you're going to break the build and not know what the heck did it, right? So just do one at a time. So let's get started. Most of these involve documentation. Now, I believe very strongly, to the core of my being, that documentation gives your project superpowers in a way that nothing else does. Documentation scales. It scales people, it scales thoughts, it scales concepts in a way that a single brain can't, a single core community member can't. So document the crap out of everything, and everybody will be grateful. How readable is that? Not bad. So if you improve your documentation, focusing on the needs of a drive-through contributor, then it will ensure efficient and successful contributions. Right? It allows everyone to set up expectations. Here's what I need to do. I see this. Here's what I expect you to do. I have said this. And this makes it very efficient and makes it more likely that people are going to participate in your project because they see that you have recognized this and you've taken the time to write it down. Also saves a lot of time by minimizing questions. People showing up into your IRC channel. Huge IRC fan. So I'm just going to use that in all my examples. So they show up to your IRC channel, and they keep asking the same questions over and over again. That wastes a lot of people's time. If people are asking the same question more than once, you've got a doc bug. Please fix it. It also standardizes processes. That makes everybody happy. Because you don't have every single person in your project doing something a different way. You're all pulling in the same direction, doing the same things for the same reason. And that is a force multiplier. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can focus on drive-through contributors with your documentation. Okay, photo taken. I will just highlight a few that I think might be helpful. First of all is just a quick start guide. This doesn't have to be anything, mind-blowing. It's just a high-level summary of your project. Here's all the documents, here's where you can find these things, here's a list of all the relevant docs you might want to have a look at. Just link to them. One of those links should be to your How to Contribute doc. This should be definitely a thing of beauty, because this is going to help more than anything else. Details. Assume zero knowledge. Step 0. What operating system are you using? Branch from there. Because don't assume everybody's on a Mac. Don't assume everybody's running the latest Ubuntu. Don't assume. So that checklists are wonderful. One of my hobbies is studying failure. And one of the ways that you minimize failure is by making checklists. It literally saves lives. So how to contribute? Great doc. Communication routes. Do you prefer Slack or IRC? Do you have a mailing list? Do you want everyone to put everything in GitHub issues? How do you want people to communicate? Because if you don't set up expectations up front and tell them how they can contact you, I can guarantee they're not going to do that. They will do whatever's most convenient for them because it's what they know best. We default to what we know best. So set up expectations first and tell people how to contact you for the best results. Tell them whom to contact for what and how. How often have you been sitting in an IRC channel of some variety? Or chat channel, some new person walks in and says, whom do I ask about? Right? Happens all the time. And again, if somebody has to ask something more than once, you have a doc bug. So document that. If you have a lot of drive-through contributors, and some projects do, some just by design won't, and that's okay. Not every project needs them. Consider having dedicated communication routes for that. Okay, what this does is it not only reduces the noise in your normal communication routes, and believe me, your experienced people are going to probably appreciate that, because they can just get on with their lives and they don't want all these questions coming at them. But what it also does is it gives your drive-through contributors and other new contributors a safe space. They can ask the questions which they might not feel comfortable asking elsewhere. So this is really great. If you do that, please make sure that at least one experienced person is in the channel at all times, is looking at the mailing list. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help your new contributors, and they will help each other. And while that is admirable, they're probably doing it wrong. Code of conduct, I'm not going to go into details because here in Python land, we know what this is and we do it well. But if you have one, it does show your Drive-Thru contributors that you care about their health and well-being. And if you don't care about their health and well-being, they're probably not going to show up to begin with. So please have one. Who's who? Who are your project leaders? Who are your core contributors and subject matter experts? Document that, because people will want to know. I have a really gnarly problem with security. Whom do I ask? Well, if people don't know it's Tibbs, they're not going to, they'll just ask everyone, right? So don't waste Tibbs' time. Well, actually do waste Tibbs' time. She loves it, she's sweet. If you haven't met Tibbs, she's marvelous. Also, if you are large enough to have sub-teams, as OpenStack is, I'm very familiar with OpenStack, very biased because the team works on it, doc that. Rules and processes, most projects won't have this. But if you do, document how to become a core contributor. This is really motivating to people. They see, as they show up to give you a contribution, that, oh wait, they've actually thought this through. This is a project that cares. This is a project that sees that it's important to standardize what makes a core and what does not. And it also, when time comes to select cores, it minimizes bias, by the way, because you've documented what it takes to be core. So you can't exclude people of color. You can't exclude women. You can't exclude people who don't speak good English. So that's really great. Also, if you are large enough for elections in government, doc that, but most aren't. Project roadmap. It can help Drive-Thru contributors know when and how their patch might get landed. So document that, and it can minimize a lot of questions and allow them to time their contributions accordingly. Your project, I guarantee, uses a special language. People are going to show up and want to give you their patch and not know the language you speak. But if you document that, then at least you have some place to direct them. If you want them to stick around, and many people do, nothing makes somebody feel excluded like sitting in a room full of people who are laughing and they don't get the joke. So, document your in-jokes. Don't use it as an us versus them gating factor, because that's assholery. Right, so that's some examples of documentation you can do. Mentoring, code review is marvelous. You can really help people be successful through code review. We have Garrett out there, we have GitHub, I believe GitLab probably has a similar thing, Bitbucket. They all have methods for you to do code review, so please do that. Office hours. Once a month for 4 hours, we have everybody sitting around in our IRC channel, ask us anything, new contributors welcome. This can maximize people showing up and actually giving you a patch. Hackfests. Doesn't have to be sponsored by anyone. No one has to pick up the tab for pizza and beer. Just announce to whatever your communication route is, hey, everyone in the South Philly area, next Saturday at 11 o'clock, we're gathering at this cafe. New contributors welcome. And if you want new contributor events, again, run similar to that very casual Hackfest, are great. Almost every single person who shows up to a new contributor event, by the way, according to my research, turns into a Drive-Thru contributor. And that's awesome, because they are a contributor, and you have their contribution. So they've made a contribution to open source, you have helped them, you have a contribution. That is a win-win-win situation. So Drive-Thru or new contributor events are marvelous for Drive-Thrus. You also can do process improvements. Tagging starter bugs helps with those people who like you, they really like you. Also having a contributor SLA, a la, if you give us a patch, we will do our damnedest to get you a review within 5 days. You don't know how motivating that is, because I know I'm guilty of receiving patches and just ignoring them. Why would people want to contribute when they look at my list of PRs and they've been sitting there for 6 months? No. So try to have an SLA of some variety. It really helps people show up and give you their code. And also, who wants to sit around on a glorious Melbourne sunny Sunday, spending the entire afternoon downloading the entirety of PyPI? Nobody. We have technology for this problem. We can make a container or a virtual machine image that will allow people to be up and running and contributing within hours rather than days. This does come with a maintenance overhead, so it might end up being too much work for you and your project and your needs. Please ask your doctor if containers are right for you. So, culture. There are a lot of things that can be done with culture in order to make it better and more accepting to drive-through contributors. All of these things must be led by example by the core contributors. First of all, value contributions, value contributors, say thank you. I shouldn't have to say this, but unfortunately, I keep having to. Foster a culture of documentation. Show people you really care about docs. Write the docs yourself. That's a really good way to show people that you as a core contributor care about docs. If you see something that needs to be docked and you don't have time, how about you quickly whip up, cut and paste an issue in your issue tracker for that? Remember when I said that most drive-through contributions are doc fixes? And that most people who are drive-through contributors love your project and just want to contribute in some small way? Guess what these two are? Chocolate and peanut butter. Because you've got low-hanging doc bugs, and you've got people who really want to fix them. So combine these two, but you can't do that if you don't foster a culture of documentation. And also, helping others must be seen as the raison d'etre. It should not be seen as a distraction from the real work. Helping others in your project is the real work. Default to assistance when people show up. Don't assume that they're just going to leave and so they don't deserve your time. They want to give you something for free. They deserve your time. And then we have outreach. Express gratitude. And then follow up. If you do get drive-through contributors, we've got I haven't coded full-time since, 2007? I can write a script to pass my Git and my commits and figure out who I have seen and who I have not. And then I can reach out to them because I have their email addresses. And I can say, hey, what was it like to contribute? Was it good? Was it bad? Was there anything I can change? And why did you leave? Because if I don't ask, I'm never going to know. I'm just going to be sitting there saying, I've got this many drive-through contributors, but not knowing how to convert them into community members and not knowing how to fix my process to get more. And finally, institute a no asshole rule. Full stop. Now, that does not mean to become the asshole yourself while you are enforcing this. Please be empathetic but firm. There are lots of resources out there for this, so I do encourage you to go look them up. I'm running short on time, so I do want to make sure I dog food and give my own gratitude. As I said, I did speak with a lot of people about this. A very few of them consented to be publicly thanked. So these are those people. Thank you, people. I spent a lot of time speaking with all of them. There are also a lot of people who are not on this list. They get equal shares in the gratitude pool here. A couple of people in the very early stages of this talk, which I've now given like 5 times, reviewed the slides. I want to thank those. My dear friends Gene Hack and our beloved Chris Neugebauer back here. And then my friend Steve Wally is just always an inspiration to me every time I have a conversation with him. And we chatted about this months and months and months ago, and then I was off to the races. So there are image credits because it's the right thing to do. You can find these in the slides, which are available right here. According to my timing, it is 28 minutes and 24, 5, 6 seconds. Marcus says I have no time? Exactly. So, therefore, I want to thank you all for everything. Thank you for showing up. I will be available out in the hallway for questions, comments, concerns, fears, wants, desires, etc., and sundry.
Thank you, Vicky. That was quite an enlightening talk.
Yeah.
I really liked it. As a thank you gift, we have this sailing tram coffee mug.
Okay, thank you. Milkshake.
Thank you.